Welcome, everyone. This is the New England Real Estate Journal Construction Trends of 2021. I'd like to thank all of our sponsors for today: Northmark, U.S. Pavement Services, Inspired Technology, Associated Subcontractors of Massachusetts, Gecko, Evolution Energy Partners, Hinkley Allen, Windover Construction, and AGC Mass Building Excellence. And that is me, Rick Kaplan. I am the MC and producer and custodian and anything else you want to put a title on. Here is our panel. Our moderator today is Kyle Regan of Gecko. He is the CEO of Gecko, I should mention. Stuart Muir, President and CEO of Windover Construction. Stephen Sullivan of Workforce Development for ABC Mass Chapter. Ronald Ciotti of Hinkley Allen, and John Ferrante, of CEO of AGC Mass. This is the New England and New York radio show podcast with your host, Rick Kaplan. That will be coming the first of the year.
Gecko offers unsurpassed quality, unwavering professionalism, developing careers in construction, providing specialized construction, maintenance, and fabrication services to leading biopharmaceutical, technology, and industrial clients since 1934. Visit them at www.gecko.com.
And now I'd like to introduce you to our moderator, Kyle Regan of Gecko.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate the opportunity to moderate this panel and certainly this topic. It's one that's hitting a lot of folks, but I think we pulled together a panel that can speak to all aspects of it, which you want to dig right into. So I want to go around the horn and let the speakers today give sort of a brief bio of themselves and their companies and what they do. I will start. Owner and CEO of Gecko, a specialty mechanical contractor based in Nashua, New Hampshire. We also operate and are most proud of our 20,000 square foot craft training center that we recently constructed in Brookline, New Hampshire. So completely direct hired staff and training is integral to what we do and in support of almost every single strategy we put in place for the business. So as we go around the horn, Steve Sullivan, ABC, Director of Workforce Development.
Thank you, Kyle. Yes, Steve Sullivan. I'm the Director of Workforce Development with the Associated Builders and Contractors of Massachusetts. I actually run the Registered Apprentice program within the organization and do a lot of outreach trying to help our employers find that next electrician or that next pipe fitter out in the street a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellie. Next, John Ferrante, AGC's Massachusetts CEO.
Thanks, Kyle. Thanks for introducing me. And thanks, Rick, for having us on the New England Real Estate Journal. I want to thank them as well. Like you said, I'm the CEO of the Associated General Contractors of Massachusetts. We're a trade association of over 100 union and open shop general contractors and subcontractors. We also have about 100 associate members who are, law firms, accounting firms, other businesses that are affiliated with the construction industry as well. We focus mostly on commercial construction, so we're building hospitals, universities, multi-unit residential developments, and some restaurant and retail as well. So thanks for having us on. I'm happy to talk about these subjects.
Great, thanks, John. Next, Stuart Muir, Windover Construction, President and CEO.
Thanks, Kyle. Stuart Muir, I'm the President and CEO of Windover Construction. We're just north of Boston, up in Beverly, Mass. We support projects all throughout New England. The type of projects we focus on are academic, both at a secondary and also a higher ed level, a lot of multi-unit, both on the affordable side and on the market rate side, along with other commercial construction management work with life science and other commercial clients. We not only are a construction manager, we also are a design builder. So we have those capabilities in-house. We will do some self-perform. We have 20 trades folks But for the most part, we're a construction manager, and those trades folks will do specialty packages or just support our projects and our trade partners along the way. Thanks for having us today.
Thanks, Stuart. And last but certainly not least is the attorney on the panel, Ron Ciani, who's a partner at Hinckley Allen. And Ron, I guess if you could do two things for us. One is certainly give us your bio. We're interested and curious to hear about what it is you do, but maybe lead right into sort of a macro level view of the things hitting the construction industry in particular, the pressures in terms of supply chain and all the things coming at construction companies. That'd be fantastic to get us rolling.
No, I appreciate that, Kyle, and thanks for the intro saying I'm the attorney on the panel. It's always the one that people go, oh gosh. No, actually, I'm Ron Ciani. I'm a partner at Hinckley Allen in our construction group. Construction is all I do. It's 100% of my time. And Hinckley Allen itself is a full service business law firm with, we're really based here in the Northeast with offices in Boston and Hartford and Providence and New York and Manchester, New Hampshire, but also stretch as far out as Chicago. Myself, I practice all over the country, construction. We have one of the largest construction groups in the entire country as far as law goes. And I practice, it's really great because I get a good overview of the entire industry from coast to coast. In fact, I believe I'm the only attorney in the country that is on both the Board of Governors of the AGC of America and also the Board of Directors of the ABC of America. So, also been the local president of the AGC of New Hampshire, currently on the Board of Directors of the ABC of New Hampshire. So I'm very tied into both John and Stephen's organizations, and think the world of both because it really assists the construction industry. And the construction industry from that macro level, Kyle, that you discussed, is an industry that I will tell you I'm incredibly proud of, and not in just the general sense of it's great to be a part of a business that builds these incredible structures, which I am. But I'm incredibly proud of what this industry is doing right now, and in an industry that I would consider an industry in crisis, an industry in chaos. And what I mean by that is I've never seen before. I've been practicing now for close to 30 years. And when you do nothing but commercial construction, you get to see all of the various issues that occur throughout. I do both litigation and corporate construction work. In other words, contracting and negotiations. And you get to see a lot of the changes that go on in the industry and a lot of the things. I've never seen a time like this where you have a job shortage issue, where you have workforce that has been depleted by 10 years ago, a recession, by various issues that have come up along the way, most recently COVID, and you have a lot of work going on, very few workers to actually get the work done. And then on top of that, you have material price escalation, volatility like we've never seen before. It's unprecedented. The cost of both, of wood and the way it reacted. Steel right now is off the charts. So we have lots of material price escalation issues that we're trying to deal with from a construction standpoint. We have material distribution interruptions or disruptions where we can't get material to the projects as the owner expected them to arrive. So we're getting hit with so many different things. The PRO Act, for those who are an open shop contractor, the PRO Act was incredibly invasive. And the fact of the matter is, it looks like it's being killed at the Washington level, but you still see states around the country bringing in sort of their own PRO Acts. So we're still going to have to be diligent relating to that if you're an open shop contractor or a merit shop contractor and feel that that's the best way to go. OSHA has been incredibly, and in fact, for those of you who don't know, part of this $1 trillion infrastructure package includes money for OSHA to increase its inspectors significantly. So we now have additional OSHA inspectors, and we're going to have additional regulations. The current administration, and this is not meant to be political, but the current administration has brought back numerous regulations on this industry that the prior administration had relaxed. So we have increased regulations. You can just go right down the list of all of the different issues that are striking this industry all at the same time, just unprecedented. And of course, we're dealing with COVID, a pandemic, which has its own issues relating to now vaccination mandates, which in our industry, everybody has to recognize this, whether you like it or not. Our industry, the construction industry, does not have a great track record of getting vaccinated. And as a result of that, we're going to see our workforce, which is already at an all-time low as far as percentage versus construction starts, get even worse, because you're now going to see workers leave this industry who don't want to get vaccinated and won't get vaccinated, who are now required, if they're going to continue to work in this industry, they're going to be required to get vaccinated. So it's going to exacerbate an already bad workforce shortage. So with all that, I teed it up for you guys.
I was going to say, other than that, Ron, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
So I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys are dealing with it, and some of the questions that I know are teed up for us. But this is well needed, because I think it's a construction industry that is in crisis right now. And I commend each one of you on this panel and every contractor throughout our region who is listening today, because you're still making it happen, and it truly is amazing.
Great, Ron. I appreciate that. And I think before
Kyle,
we get
excuse me one second, Kyle, before you go on, I just want to remind people, if they have a question for anyone on the panel, they can put it in the Q&A box below. That's all I needed to say. On to you, Kyle.
Great. So, Ron, thank you. You certainly framed it appropriately. It's all those things and then some. So I won't even get into cash flow slowing down and some other things we can pile on top of what you quickly touched on, including the regulatory environment that you briefly touched on, but you get into licensed trades and apprenticeship ratios and all those things. There's such a deck that's stacked against businesses and the workforce. It's a concern, but I'm glad you brought it up. I wanted to make the point for this panel and for the listeners that, we've got representation here of, union voices and non-union voices. These pressures against the companies, whether they're union or non-union, are equal. And, I hate the expression when we went into COVID, it was, we're all in this together. But it's so true that we're all in this together. We operate our training facility with the understanding that people may go through our training programs and then go to the union, and that's fine. There's a famous political cartoon about a CFO asks a CEO, well, what if we spend all this money and train all these people and they leave the company? And the CEO's response is, well, what if we don't train them and they stay? So we're all in this together in the sense that we need to build a workforce that can support the construction industry on either side of the merit shop world or the non-merit shop world. So a little bit of a free-form section next. If each can sort of talk about, each speaker can talk about some of the things that they see they're dealing with, similar to what Ron had just kind of teed up. Hopefully there's a little more good news. But because we're all dealing with, Ron just kind of pulled the scab off and made us realize that it's so true, all of those things and then some. And it's unfortunate that it's such a vibrant industry that has such a potential for growth and employment, that it's under such pressure. So I'd like to just kind of go around, starting with John Ferrante at AGC, just to speak a bit in a free-form sort of way about some of the things that you're dealing with and the challenges that AGC members are facing.
Sure, yeah, I appreciate that. And I think Ron, definitely did a great job of hitting on all of the kind of shifting variables that are affecting the industry right now. Some of them are kind of long-standing in terms of workforce shortages and things like that, and then some are brand new. Vaccine mandates, dealing with COVID. I think everyone's been kind of learning as they go in terms of how to deal with the first global pandemic of our lifetime. So one of the things when I was thinking about the topics that we wanted to touch on, which was kind of all of the above, was how difficult it is to be a contractor in today's environment. It's an inherently kind of risky business. The fundamental foundation of construction contracting is, you all look at the same project documents and you basically put a bet on yourself that you can build it more efficiently than your competition. And then you have the owner calls you out on it and says, okay, go do it. And, 6 or 12 months have passed before you even, get the opportunity to do that. So I think risk management in construction and understanding how to factor in these different variables are the mark of, the most successful businesses in the industry. And we've all seen companies, large or small, get crushed by one bad bid, one bad project, or just even a mediocre year can really hit the brakes on a company that's on the ascent. So it's like Ron said, there's always an element of chaos in any project. So if you can manage as much risk as possible, then you increase your chances of success. But the issues that he talked about, the material shortages, lack of workforce, increased regulatory environment, those are all things that completely change the risk calculation. And, in terms of like the material price volatility, that's changing daily. So it's really difficult to be a contractor and say, oh yeah, 12 months from now, I'll be able to, do this project at this price, when that may be a moving target on the day you're putting your bid in. So one of the challenges that I've heard from our members is that they're starting to kind of fall back to more, places that they feel more secure in terms of their bidding strategies, and looking at clients they know, subcontractors they've always worked with, things like that, so that they can manage those risks moving forward. I've heard contractors are turning down bid opportunities because they're concerned about the ability to staff projects, and that's not even just in the field. Like, the field labor is part of it, but also in the office as well, just in terms of having enough project managers and estimators to look at all of the opportunities that are out there. Because the real challenge right now is that we're sort of at peak demand for construction. And I think the industry has almost plateaued in terms of how much further we can continue our upward trajectory without, tackling the issue of workforce development moving forward. And, I think that's the importance of workforce development, is that it's going to expand the capacity in a sustainable way so that we can continue to, increase the size and scale of the industry, while also kind of managing the risk that our contractors are putting out there every day.
Yeah, it's very true. And using workforce development as the segue, Steve, I was wondering if you could kind of touch on, as the director of workforce development for ABC, if you could touch on sort of things, challenges you see member companies having from your perspective.
Yeah, I think the main reason why there's such a need for construction work is in America today is that the people that have been in the industry for the last 40 years are retiring. These workers are physically worn out, and those same workers are not urging their kids to enter the field. They're, a field that, they did very well at. Again, you got most guidance counselors and school administrators are pushing kids towards the college route, especially in New England. We live in that right here. Parents think it's an unsafe industry. You know, their parents are equivocating what their brothers and parents went through, and they think it's the same exact industry as it was, and it's not. This is all kind of a perfect storm contributing to the lack of construction workers right now. Other issues are, you know, real lack of skills. I mean, construction workers aren't just banging nails; they're using computers, and they're reading formulas. Another issue, to be honest with you, is the drug testing is a deterrent. People know that if they're going to be drug tested, they're not going to jump into the industry, unfortunately. And I think finally, there are no more shop classes at the junior high level and even at the high school level. Vocational schools have them, but the high schools themselves, the comprehensive high schools, just don't push to have shop classes anymore. So a whole generation of folks are missing out at. And I also think back to Ron was talking about OSHA, and OSHA works both ways. You know, I would argue that in some cases construction is much safer than it even was 20 years ago. OSHA is around, knocking on the door. Many ergonomic advances, wearable technology like the exoskeleton vest, which is really unique, which helps you lift heavy objects over your head, heavy tools over your head. So I think workers are in a better place today. So I think it's all going to come together. But right now, it's very difficult to find people to grow our companies.
100%. Great. Thanks, Sully. Stuart Muir, I wonder if from the GCCM perspective, what's some of the stuff that Wendover is dealing with?
Well, as Ron mentioned, chaos is upon us here in our industry. So I could go and talk about so many challenges we're seeing right now. A couple of the obvious ones we've talked about, aside from trade partner workforce shortages, but I would say anything to do with materials. Material procurement right now is a major issue. Never seen it before like this. We've always seen when you're getting manufactured products that have multiple supply chains, for instance, like HVAC equipment and generators and things like that. Those always have long lead times for the obvious reasons of all the different parts that have to go into them. Those are obviously impacted right now, but I'm not as, we've been able to manage those over the years, and we always know that we have to release those pieces of equipment early. I never, ever would have thought that I'd be staring at 30 weeks or 26 weeks to get rigid insulation for a roof, ever. And that is the craziness that we're dealing with right now, and the challenges. Every single product has to be checked out, not just once, not just twice. It has to be followed until it lands on site. And that is a huge challenge for our team. So material procurement, and I looked at the list of the attendees to try to get a feel for who's listening today and the components and the makeup of those folks, because how do they fall into this overall construction project? And I saw some owners and I think I saw some design partners too. But I think right now collaboration across the board is critical. And if we don't have that, if we don't have the ability for people to be flexible, we are having major issues on projects of getting them having stoppages in schedule. And I hate to say it, I mean, we have specified products that we know we want to get. But fortunately, you got to work closely with your design team and client team to make sure that they know they have to pivot for an or equal because of lead times that pop up that weren't there when we released the material. These are things that are just occurring as we're waiting for things to be delivered. So it's been very challenging for our teams. We've had to add many, many more people to our team. And so that's driving up, is obviously driving up the costs, general conditions. It's driving up, I'll talk a little bit about it later on, but worker fatigue. And it's also, it's requiring us to really make sure that, we can't staff projects. So it was mentioned, I think, by Steve earlier, maybe John, about, having to walk away from projects because we know we would normally have the staff to support it, but maybe we don't. And we don't want to take on that risk. So it's around the risk management of that. The volatility. So there's one thing about getting the materials, and then the volatility around escalation. I mean, the consumer price index is, we haven't seen like this before, and it just keeps on growing. It's going to have to stop at some point. the question is, how do we look into our crystal ball and talk to our economists and talk to our peers, like a panel like this, to find out, what are they seeing in either in the different parts of the country, different types of projects that require different materials. When is this thing going to slow down? And that's really, again, getting ourselves wrapped around the entire project team, especially our clients, understanding what the risk is. But being fair and open and transparent is what we've been doing. And that's the only success to getting through this. Everyone has to put their cards on the table. We have to all get in the same warrior circle and understand what we're up against as far as the volatility, putting price indexes into contracts, which I know Ron's been doing probably for a long time, but especially right now, he's in a blitz of putting in every single contract, either on the owner side or the CM or our trade partner side, just to make sure that we're all protected and we're setting clear expectations out of the gate and how we're going to work through this together.
Yeah, and Kyle, if I can just add to that, if I may.
Sure.
Stuart, you brought up some very good points, and I will tell you that, John, not to steal your thunder, but the AGC, John had reached out to me a couple of months ago to put together a committee on material price escalation and best practices and the way to handle that, both material price escalation and the distribution disruptions that we're experiencing. What's the best practices? We're going to try to prepare a white paper, and it's a great group in the fact that we do have the AGC involved, the ABC involved, ASA is involved. We have contractors, we have subcontractors, we have suppliers, we have owners, some of the institutional owners around New England too. And I am just blessed enough to be the facilitator of the group. And so we're going to be putting together what we feel is a white paper that properly gives some guidance anyway on how to deal with these price volatilities, these unprecedented price volatility. And you hit it on the head, Stuart. The key to all of this is collaboration and communication. I think everybody is starting to recognize that. I can give you the example. I had a steel contractor just recently contact me and say, we didn't have a price escalation clause in our contract, but I can't take on a $500,000 loss based on the price of steel when we quoted it versus now. And the issue is, how do you handle that? Because it's easy to just say, okay, the owner shoves it down to the GC shoves it down to the steel contractor, the steel sub, and the steel sub says, I can't handle it, so I'm walking away. So now, how does that help anybody? Because you can go after them legally. You can start a big old litigation. They're probably going to go under, go into bankruptcy, and that doesn't help anybody. Now it delays the project, it increases the prices. So the communication and the collaboration are going to be key as we go through this. And that starts with the owner, but it goes right down through the GCs and the subs and suppliers. There has to be collaboration and communication.
And the trust around that. One other thing, just if I can, somebody mentioned earlier about bringing on trade partners early. That's what we've been doing. That's one of our strategies. And again, it's all about trust. It's all about transparency. We know that certain trades, they have to be able to support their workforce and plan for it. So we're going to bring them on early. We're going to work towards a design build approach. And that's another thing, regardless if we're CM or not, CM at risk or design build, it still feels like a design build because we have to pivot along the way. We have to make modifications of material when it's procurement, or work with trade partners early on to make sure that we're designing it accordingly to the supply chain. So that's the other thing I want to mention.
Thanks. Those are two great segues to one of the things I guess it's a theme of better news from this end. So I'll take off the moderator hat, put on the Gecko hat for a second. This last year, one of our most key clients knew they had a critical project coming to be started in October, November. It hasn't started like everything else. Now it's going to be January, February. Anyway, they had engaged with us and asked us to pre-buy, direct with the owner, pre-buy $3 million worth of stainless steel tubing for this project. The design was 45% complete. We purchased it, we're warehousing it, and we are QCing it and checking it. We haven't seen the drawings to bid the job yet, but we have the tubing. So hats off to that owner, because we work closely with them, letting them know the sort of the headwinds that the industry is facing, particularly the supply chain. And you mentioned rigid roof installations. Stainless steel tubing is still at 50 to 60 week deliveries. That's a year. So there's no way a company like Gecko can exist without stainless steel tubing at the ready. So that is, I guess, a look behind the screen is what the best owners, in our opinion, are doing. They're engaging early with key contractors to make sure that the material is in their possession, so that when the work is going to happen, and these things have to happen. The project they're talking about is a biofarm project. These are delivering key life-saving and therapeutics to an industry that's desperate for it. And the projects can't just wait a year or two. There's people that need these things now. So if you or a family member is in a hospital waiting for these key therapeutics or these medicines, you don't want to hear, well, stainless steel tubing is a year delivery. So we'll get at it in probably a year or two or three after the FDA gets in. So it's a little bit of an example in real time as to what you're suggesting and what we're seeing. And we have had to echo what was said earlier. We've walked away from a couple jobs simply based on our workforce and the workforce availability. We have 220 direct hire trades in the field for Gecko. And there was so much work coming at us at such a pace, we had to walk away from a job. A month ago, a job finally came to happen, which took 3 years in development: sales, business development, design assists, engineering support, budgeting support. We got to the de-scoping period of the job, ready to be awarded the job. It was a $15 million process job. And I had to start the meeting with saying, we can't do this. We cannot do this project. And we have to tell you now, because it's not fair to you and to the owner for us to commit to this job and not be able to deliver. So we had to walk away. Thank God we did, because at some point you can't get blood from a stone. So even with 220 and increasing field trades at the ready, they're accounted for and they're busy, and we just can't do it all. So that communication breaks a contractor's heart, because you never want to walk away from a job. But if you're going to walk away from a job, you have to do it before the job starts, because once it starts, then Ron gets involved and it gets really, really ugly and expensive. So this gets to the heart of the matter, workforce development. We wanted to talk about that and really, kind of touch on the key aspects. ABC released a stat a year ago about the shortage of the workforce, skilled workforce demands. And they estimated about 500,000 jobs were going to be opened and not be able to be filled to meet the need of the construction industry in America each year, year over year, over the next few years. So, those stats change so quickly over time. So it's unfair to say by 2030, we're going to be at X, Y, or Z, because who knows? But I do know by 2021, 22, 23, we're feeling it now, and it's not getting better. So I wanted to, we've got some questions I wanted to make sure the panelists had chances to answer around workforce development, and in particular recruitment. How do we get people into the workforce? So Ron, starting with you, are there any technological advances in construction that you see that may make the construction industry a more appealing or interesting career path for the next generation of people?
Yeah, I think there are. I mean, our society still sees our industry as sort of, this dinosaur industry. People are out there still taking a hammer and putting a nail against a board and hammering it in. And our technological advances are pretty dramatic when people start to see, the use of building information modeling, or what we call BIM. And when they start to see the use of, as a project engineer, as a project manager, as a contractor, you have to start to understand that the software that we use now, Procore and some of the other software we use, are pretty complicated. And it really makes things very intriguing and interesting from a worker standpoint. It's no longer just look at this diagram on a piece of paper and go build it, go take that piece of lumber and stick it against the wall and nail it in. Yes, some of that still has to be done, but there's technological advances. One of the things I found very interesting was about 5 years ago, I was speaking with the AGC national economist, Ken Simonson. And one of the things that Ken brought out was the fact that the work at that time, the level of construction work had returned to in fact, advanced beyond pre-recession levels back in 2008. And it had gone to that with a third less workforce. The workforce was down almost 33%. And what made up the difference to that was technological advancements. And so those guys who love technology, those kids out there that really enjoy working with technology, think about graders now. Half the graders aren't manned anymore. Graders are out there doing GPS work from somebody, utilizing a remote control, basically, like they wouldn't, like they drive around their little remote car when they were a kid. And yet they're driving a grader now whose blade is being controlled by GPS and figuring out exactly what the grade needs to be. It is amazing. So kids out there nowadays should not be looking at this industry as this Neanderthal industry. It's an industry that really, if you enjoy technological advancements and enjoy working with technology, it gives you that opportunity. In fact, I will tell you, I just had the opportunity to, one of my clients in Texas, who's a prefabricator, just opened up a huge new office down there and had this grand opening. And one of the things they have is a virtual reality room, which they go in, and as a prefabricator, they do interior walls and preset interior walls and do lots of different things. They have an amazing product. But you can go in and put on this virtual reality equipment, and starting with the site, they will build up the foundation for you, the exterior walls, and then they start putting in the interior walls, and you walk around saying, this room is too small. Can you increase the size of this room? Can you move this wall? Can you have this wall be glass? And they change it around while you're in there. And then they just click from that point, literally from the moment you stop using the VR, it goes into production. It literally goes into what they call an ICE file, and boom, goes into the manufacturing process. So it's all that these technological advancements. Now that's a project manager who is working inside, with the owner, who is figuring out exactly how, and it's all computers. And now it's going into advancement. So that's an advancement. The other advancement is prefabrication itself. If there are guys out there who want to go into the construction industry, but don't want to be on top of a building in February, they want to be in a climate controlled, there are those options now. There are those options to work in that, controlled environment of a prefabricated or modular built component. So the fact of the matter is, no matter whether you're building high rises or whether you're building single family homes, the prefabrication and modular building is here to stay, and it's going to be a part of it. And so we're going to see advancements in that. If you can even get people into that field, it will help the workforce tremendously. So there's lots of different ways that I think the kids of today, in this next generation, if they're looking for a more controlled environment, it's there. If they don't really care about the environment, but they love the technological advancements, that's there, and they can enjoy these technological advancements on the site, on these buildings. I'd love, anybody who enjoys technological advancements should go and spend a day, with some of your guys, Kyle, or some of your guys, Stuart, because the fact of the matter is, I think most people completely misunderstand where this industry is at in construction these days. So
yeah, 100%. I'll echo that. We were fortunate. We hosted the superintendent of schools for SAU 39, which is Southern New Hampshire, Amherst, Boston, at our craft training center, because personal relationship reached out to him, just said, I'd like to open your eyes as to what we're doing in career opportunities for your guidance counselors and your career counselors for these kids coming out of the high schools who have traditionally been pushed towards 4-year college degrees and not selling against four-year college degrees, just opening up another avenue so that your eyes are open. And you can see what we're doing. So within our craft training center, we also have our fabrication business, which, you know, in a large biofarm job, we will prefabricate 50 to 75% of that job in Brookline, even though it's being installed in Andover and Portsmouth and Milford and elsewhere or across the country. But so we walked him around and said, this is welding. And to his credit, very savvy. And I said, this is welding. And we had a bunch of orbital welding machines. Orbital welding machines are computerized welders, and they weld stainless steel. And it doesn't look, he says, that's welding. You know, everybody, you say welding and they envision sparks flying and rusty old pipe and slings on it, maybe a rope, maybe it's on a stand. And I said, that's welding. And that's a computer box that's making that weld. And he said, wow, that's computers. That's robots. It's everything that these kids, you know, that turn these kids on. You know, if they say, want to get into welding, no, that's dangerous, dirty, sparks, everything else. I don't want to do that, but I can work with a computer and a robot to make a weld. Yeah, that, you know, count me in. So we're seeing the trend move, but absolutely when we talk about the technology as it assists the industry and how it's utilized, it's definitely a game changer for folks. Another question for John, as it relates to recruitment, with so much effort being made in the area of workforce development, how are you aligning these efforts with the obvious need to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in the construction industry? How does AGC member companies dealing with those things?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting that you guys, I mean, Ron and Kyle, you both sort of touched on the subject of kind of changing perceptions of the construction industry. So I think, you know, teachers, parents, kids, you know, even just the general public kind of views construction as, you know, rough, tough, dirty fingernails and, you know, that kind of thing. And of course, those jobs are always going to be out there for, you know, people who enjoy that aspect of it. But with technological advances, I think Steve's touched on the advances in safety and the safety culture that has now, you know, completely consumed the industry. I mean, I can't tell you how different the industry is than probably, you know, some of your parents saw it as, or, you know, experienced it. So I view the efforts to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion as similar to establishing that safety culture, where it's really, we're just trying to change the attitudes within the industry, but also the perception of the industry. And, you know, AGC Mass, we're very explicit in our commitment to helping lead the way on it. You know, not to get on my soapbox here, but, you know, I'm a millennial, and my generation's just stepping up into leadership of some of these organizations like AGC. You know, we're the second most diverse generation in history, and right behind us is the Zoomers, who are the most diverse. So the future of any industry is going to be diversity and building out a culture where, you know, anybody from any background is welcome. And I think construction traditionally has been very successful at kind of ignoring socioeconomic differences. You know, we don't care if you came from a blue collar family or, you know, you came from a white collar family and you're interested in getting your hands dirty. You know, we're welcoming to all of that, and it's really just trying to teach people how to welcome in others that may not look like them, in addition to those that may not have the same background. So I think, you know, AGC, we have a couple different committees that do this work. Building Women in Construction Committee focuses on providing networking opportunities and increasing educational opportunities for women in the industry. We have the Committee for Diversity and Inclusion, which focuses directly on changing this industry culture and trying to increase the awareness of, you know, the need for diversification. And, you know, we've created board seats for both of those committees because we want our leadership to kind of represent the next generation of the industry. And, you know, we've really taken it seriously. AGC of America has a culture of care pledge, which is basically just allowing a business owner to draw the line in the sand and say, hey, we're not going to put up with, you know, any kind of hateful, disrespectful speech or, you know, activity on a job site. And, you know, a no graffiti template we provided to all of our member companies, because you hear about, you know, some terrible things being written on the wall of a porta-john or something like that. But, you know, all of this goes into the company culture, the job site culture, which if we are as successful at, you know, at changing the culture of diversity on a job site as we have been at instituting the culture of safety, then I think that the populations that we'll be able to draw from in recruiting the next, you know, generation of the workforce it's going to be unlimited. So that's really, you know, that's how we kind of marry workforce development with the diversity element is that, you know, we need to be looking everywhere, and we need to be welcoming to everyone. And, you know, I think that that's really how we can increase the capacity for the industry.
Yeah, thanks, Rod. It's an important point to make, because as we talk about the gap in the supply and demand curve on the skilled workforce, we certainly can't exclude anybody. There's certainly a culture within construction traditionally that could be less than welcoming on a job site. You mentioned the porta potties. That's a brave new world out there. I mean, there's words in those porta potties I've never seen, and I grew up in a baseball clubhouse. So it's all part of, you know, addressing the issue of the need for more and more people to want to work in this industry, and removing any of the barriers that are pushing that away. So, Stuart, I was wondering on your, because I kind of touched on, but what are your thoughts on recruitment? How we get more students just to attend trade high schools and the trade apprentice programs, those programs, just as a slow sort of feeder to you know, the journeyman world. It's a slow process, but I think it starts with filling that faucet right there, right? So getting it started and starting the process.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. I mean, and we're a CM, so we don't have the deep bench of workforce that many of you have. But I think, you know, everyone's touched upon it throughout our discussions today. But education, to me, early education, getting out in front of these kids and parents, and you know, if you're talking about guidance counselors in high schools, you know, I've always said, I've got several friends both in Germany and France, and they have a model that we really have to try to push and focus our current education system towards in the US. And again, that's my opinion, but understanding where the skill sets and how people are wired early on in their education, so that we can, you know, move them to a curriculum that makes sense for a true sustainable career path. You know, Mike Rowe, I don't know if he either rubs people the right way or the wrong way, but the gentleman is behind Dirty Jobs, and he's doing great things as far as funding scholarship programs and really trying to get that education out to people, that it's not a bad thing to be in the trade. So how do we change that stigma? And, you know, by utilizing technology and by working on offsite fabrication and construction, so that you're in a better environment. You're not standing on, you know, an I-beam 5 stories up when the wind's blowing in February, you know. And how do we change that so it's more enticing to these people that they want to get in? You know, diversity, belonging, inclusion, and equity is a huge one too. Making sure that there aren't barriers put up there. And again, there's stigmas and within our industry that we got to break down. They've been there for a long time. They're systemic, but we got to break those down so people feel comfortable getting into the trades and getting into construction. As far as what we're doing at Windover, I mean, just a small thing, but we've been doing a mentoring program with Essex Technical School, which is close to our office. We've been doing it, I don't know, unfortunately we couldn't do it last year, but it's a Furniture Trust Eco Carpentry Challenge, and it's an annual event. So, you know, we put people over and work with the faculty and the students to help them support this challenge around recycling furniture materials and creating something and repurposing it. In any event, it's not about the competition. It's about how do we work at a professional level and really engage these students and energize them to stay with it, especially if they're in the trade schools. Unfortunately, the trade school system is not adequate to support the needs of kids that want to get into it now. So it's pushing on, you know, Steve can talk since blue in his face, because they're pushing through the workforce development. And same with you, Kyle, and all of our trade partners are really trying to get that apprentice programs in-house, get the kids out after high school, or even a GED program, and then just get them going and get them started so that they get the momentum going. So those are just a couple of things what we're trying to do, but just how do you change the views and of what life is like being a construction trade person.
Yeah, I think that's funny. I can speak with some perspective because we run our federally approved apprentice program, our own, here at Gecko for the last 20 years. We've graduated 130 apprentices through our apprentice program. 50 of them still work here, but you think about that over 20, that's 50 people over the last 20 years. That's not the pace we need to maintain it. So, you know, we're limited in the pipe fitting world by ratios that I think are ridiculously out of whack. There's more apprentice brain surgeons allowed to operate under one brain surgeon at Mass General than there are apprentice pipe fitters allowed to fit pipe on a job site. So we need to get that right. There's a lot of those things, but I think it starts with, and Sully, I was going to ask you if you can just talk a bit about, you know, for the audience, how do apprenticeships work? You know, how does it all go down, and what does it look like?
Yeah, that's great. It's a great question. I mean, basically, apprenticeships, registered apprenticeships particularly, are a worker company contract. So apprenticeships in the construction industry are based on the earn while you earn concept. Apprentices need to work 2,000 hours a year, which is about 50 weeks a year at 40 hours a week. It's called the OJT side of apprenticeship. And then you have to complete 150 hours of related technical instruction, which is the classroom, so to speak, side of apprenticeship per year. Okay. It's a formal agreement, literally, between the worker and the employer. The worker agrees to show up for work. Think about that. The worker agrees to show up for work 2,000 hours a year and complete 150 hours of school. And the employer agrees to pay the apprentice for 2,000 hours a year. So they're not the apprentice is not the first to get laid off, if you look at it that way. The company pays for the apprentice's school costs and gives them the apprentice a step raise every 6 months to a year, depending on the apprenticeship. The apprenticeship calls for a progressive wage increase. And then what's nice about it is apprenticeships are a national, US DOL portable credential, which can be taken anywhere in the country. So you can get your apprenticeship, or go through an apprenticeship in Massachusetts and take it to Seattle if you want, or any other place in the country. So it's a formal process, and it's a great concept because it's earn while you learn. You're literally going to work every day, and in some cases you're going to school at night, maybe on a weekend, or through other means. But it's a great concept.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll just add, because I talked a bit about our apprentice program at Gecko. We in the last 5 years have started what we call the boot camp. It's a pre-apprentice program. It's 4 weeks long. It's paid. It's to get folks into the company before they start their apprentice program September 1st with classroom, because there's classroom hours and as well as practical training hours they need to account for. But our boot camp, the pre-apprentice boot camp, was focused around basic safety, basic introduction to power tools, basic construction math, just so when they showed up on a job site on day one, they weren't completely fresh out of the box. They had some training and could work safely within hour one of day one. But you know, every year we put out a career day and we recruit people in to interview for open opportunities within our boot camp. And due to ratios, apprentice ratios, we can take 10 to 15 people into each apprentice class each year. We had 40 people that were very well qualified. Every one of them could have been a success within our apprentice program. We could only hire 15 of them. So there was 25 folks we turned away from a career in construction that where'd they go? I don't know. I bet you they didn't stay in construction. They went to look for something else. So marry that with the need construction has for skilled labor and its restrictions. Ron touched on it, but that it restricts itself from even being able to meet the need because of the regulatory environment on top of it. So, but I guess I'm just echoing some of those comments. So the apprentice programs are effective. And I think the more we can get people enlightened as to what they are and how they work, the better it will be. John, I had a question for you as it relates with AGC, and Ron touched on it earlier, but risk management and workforce constrictions, and I touched on it as well. You know, how limiting has that been for companies' ability to expand and develop, not only to do projects, but to, you know, invest strategically in other areas and those sort of things. So what's AGC seeing in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, I think I touched on it a little bit at the beginning, but you know, AGC is really focused on ways that we can build capacity, you know, for our members. When we're talking about like workforce development, Steve just touched on the apprenticeship programs. I think the earn while you learn model is great to advertise to kids and parents because it's not saying that going into a trade is a dead end. You know, it's not like, oh, I couldn't go anywhere else, so I went to go work. You know, it's saying you're going to continue your classroom instruction. And we like to advertise a lot of apprenticeship programs have articulation agreements with community colleges and local universities that say, okay, if you spent, you know, hundreds of hours a year in a classroom for the last 3, 4, 5 years, we're going to give you some credit for that if you'd like to come get an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree. And, you know, so the model should not be that construction is a dead end. You know, we should advertise it as, you know, going into a trade is a step towards a college degree if that's the direction you want to go. Oh, and by the way, you're going to get paid the entire time you're doing it. So, you know, if you're going to go to a commuter school and get a degree in history, and believe me, I got a history degree, and you know, it's not worth the paper it's printed on most of the time. So, you know, I think being able to go learn a true skill and also have the opportunity to move towards a higher degree is admirable. And that's what needs to be advertised to some of these kids is, you know, this isn't the end all be all. You're not going to have dirty fingernails for the rest of your life. If you choose to continue working at it, you can end up running a company, running a crew, doing anything that you want to do. And, you know, I've heard from my members, you know, so going from the field to the office side, we have a lot of members that are just actively recruiting anybody from college that they can. So if you have a kid or somebody that's going to college, and again, history degree right here, I was one of them, you know, who has no idea what they want to do when they come out of school. You know, the college dropout rate's like 25%, probably for that reason, because nobody knows what to do after college. And so what a lot of our companies are doing is they'll just bring in a class of kids similar to a pre-apprenticeship program. They'll say, here's what it's like in the field. Here's what it's like in the office. Here's what it's like to be an estimator. Here's what it's like to be a project manager. You know, where do your interests lie? And their philosophy is, if you have a person with a good personality and the right, you know, ability to communicate and the right skill set, then you can teach them a lot of the management side of the industry. And that's really, you know, I think, well, it's a symptom of the larger problem, which is that everybody just wants people at this point. So we're kind of welcoming all comers and taking it on ourselves to train them up. And so, you know, AGC, we're starting a workforce development initiative at the high school level. We brought in 7 teachers last year from 7 different high schools across Massachusetts, taught them about commercial construction, basically gave them the pitch I just gave to all of you, which was, you know, it's not a dead-end career. It's an opportunity in the field to better yourself and make money at the same time. And then it's, you know, if you have kids that are going to college not knowing what they want to do afterwards, they should consider construction, because it is highly compensated, highly competitive, and, you know, a very dynamic industry to be a part of. So that's sort of how we're tackling both sides of that issue.
We have 2 VPs at Gecko that both came out of our apprentice program. So these were kids that came out of technical schools, welding colleges in Maine. And now they're running 2 business units for us. And the third one that came in with the same class, he was in on the same path. And he got in the office and said, "It's so boring in here. What do you guys do all day?" So he's a general superintendent. It's amazing, to your point, John, that people will find their likes and dislikes and what they want. There's a lot less. I told the guy that went out, stays in general superintendent role, I said, there's not less important. It's arguably more important than any other role. And it's just a different level of adrenaline. So, it's a point to be made.
And Kyle, if I could just add in.
Rick, do we have time? Oh, go ahead,
well, we already ran over, but, you know, I mean, we could probably go on for another hour. I'm sure this is very interesting, but I have 2 takeaways. I know, Ron, you had something to say, but one of the things, 40 years ago in the automotive business, there was a company called New England Automotive Collaborative, and it was designed for all the New England car dealerships that they all owned a piece of this company, and it was a supply house. It held all of the parts for all of the different American-made vehicles, where they ordered, you know, an enormous supply. They actually sold a lot of the product that they had overstocked to other parts of the country because they had such a enormous supply house. So that's something that I think that's what you guys are talking about, and also a collaborative, you know, with other owners of construction companies. And Kyle, you said you had that with the tubing, where you, so I mean, that's something that probably is a good thing that maybe will come out of this, that you guys can pull together. And the second thing I wanted to say is that the trades, what's missing is that piece that when kids are in the middle school or junior high school, what I call it, they're not seeing any of this. Where when I grew up, everyone would take a trade. It would be metal, it would be wood, even home economic, home, you know, you learn how to cook and things like that. I just wanted to show everyone. I don't know if you can see this. You can't see it, but it's a lamp that I made in junior high school in my wood shop.
That's cool.
So it's just, you know, those are things that you feel a sense of accomplishment. And I think, is there a way that there's construction companies can have an after-school program set up with the schools? Because I think a lot of kids probably would sign up for something like that.
I'll say, one of the things I'll say, Rick, is we worked with internships and co-ops just to get people into Gecko, into our fab shop. And, you know, I guess I'm from the old axiom, Ronald Reagan, of less government, more fun. Because there's so much regulation on top of everything we do. It's just counterproductive because they can't come and work. Those kids, that's a fantastic idea you came up with. They're not allowed to walk around that space and be in a work environment and all those things. So, you know, it's like, yeah, I agree 100%, but there's too many hurdles in the way. They're not, you know, we do it and we have high school kids here, but we have to employ a bunch of people like Ron to make sure we've got everything covered so that we're trying to do the right thing.
Right.
But sometimes it's hard to even figure out what the right thing is. So we need people smarter than me to tell us.
Yeah, it's too bad because it was such an important part of going to school for a lot of kids.
Yeah, and I think the more growth we've seen from the federal government overreach into states and the Department of Education, the federal Department of Education, it squashed all that because it said, we're going to do this across the country. So we no longer teach, high school kids in Florida how to fish and, New Hampshire kids how to groom snow. They all learn the same thing. So it's not, it's just part of that oversight and regulatory oversight that squashes a lot of great ideas and innovation because it's one size fits all. It's why less government, more fun. But
yeah, well, I think
the tech school, not the tech schools, the industrial arts, which is what it was called back in my day, and home economics, that all went away. They don't do it anymore. So.
The other thing I wanted to add before was just quickly, the fact is that even those kids that want to go and get their 4-year degree, construction shouldn't be an area that they no longer think about. And one of the things that, I know that there's a lot of kids out there who have been, basically ground into them that they need to go get a 4-year degree. Well, it's okay to go get a 4-year degree in something that might translate into this field very well. And I will tell you that without any pushing from me, and maybe it's just because I talk about it so much around the house, my son went and he did go get his 4-year degree, got a degree in mechanical engineering and civil engineering at WPI, Worcester Polytech, and he decided to go into construction. And it was his own choice. He made that on his own. And but it shows that, it's great if you can make that decision early in high school or go to a trade. But if you are also somebody who wants to go and get a 4-year degree, it doesn't mean you can't get a great, paying job in this field and a great career in this field. And
Ron, does he want a job?
No coaching,
Kyle.
But I'll say to echo that we have two of our top this year's project engineers, the two of the best that we brought in. One has a finance degree from Bryant, and another one has a government degree from Harvard. And they're fantastic at reading P&IDs and contracts and submittals. And so it's open to everybody. Absolutely.
Yeah, like I think I told you all about my son who went to school. He has a 4-year bachelor's in marketing and business, and now he's a project manager in construction. So you're right. It doesn't mean that you don't you don't have to go to college. You can go to college and you can get that more of your education that way, but it's never going to hurt you.
Right. No, I think.
And before we go, there were 2 questions, and I Steve, did you answer that question about the pandemic and the vaccination?
I did not,
No, okay.
Rick. I want to yield to the panel as well.
Okay, so let me read the question. Curious to see what you may suggest to employers about asking workers if they are fully vaccinated or not. Some hospitals are requiring our skilled trades workers to be vaccinated, so we do ask the candidate and say that their answer is voluntary. Does that seem prudent?
Ron, I don't know if you want to touch on the legal side of this, but I can talk about the contractor side of it.
Mm-hmm. I can certainly talk about the legal side of this. You can, and have unfortunately continuously for the last few weeks with contractors around the country, you can ask employees whether or not they have been vaccinated. That's absolutely allowed, and it's right within the federal guidelines. And you can even collect the medical records to prove, in other words, a copy of a vaccination card or vaccination medical record. It has to be sealed and put into their personnel file as a medical record, and it's covered under privacy rights for that employee. So you as a contractor can't then hand it out to the owner. If the owner says, I only want vaccinated people on my work site, you can't give them a packet of vaccination cards and say, here's all my employees who are going to be on the work site. They're all vaccinated. What you can do as a contractor is give them an attestation that all of the people on their work site will be vaccinated, or all of the people within your organization are vaccinated, depending on which one is accurate.
Yeah, it's funny.
That attestation, but you can't give out the cards or the medical records themselves.
Yeah, we ran up against this pretty early in the process when these mandates started coming out, and we've got a few clients of ours that were 100% mandates, and we had CMs on those sites saying, "Send us all the vaccination cards." And I said, "Are you nuts? I can't do any of that." Right. I said, "I can get you the attestation." But what we've done is we did survey everybody, because we have staffing restraints. We have sites where it's 100% vaccine mandate. And we have to know who is and who's available to be staffed on certain jobs. And that was all it was used for. There are HIPAA laws that run in and out of this. And I was surprised how many CMs, big, large CMs that we were dealing with that were unprepared for and responding to owners' requests. Well, okay, 100% vaccination. It's okay. And would tell our supervisors, go around, get everybody's vaccine cards, give it to me. And I said, we cannot do any of that. And we actually, with one of our key clients recently, 100% vaccine mandate, we said, we can't do this work on the shutdown. I was going to start December 1st. The shutdown was later in the month of December. I said, then we can't do it. We have to walk away because we won't be able to staff it. We don't have the people. And they gave us a 12-week exemption. Said, we'll test 30% of your people. So they're starting to relent when the reality of these mandates starts to hit. Well, you can't operate this building with your mandate. It's the reality is starting to hit, and we're starting to see some things, workarounds. I would say we at Gecko, this is a personal statement, we're 100% anti-mandates. Mm-hmm. You can be pro-vaccine and anti-mandate and live in the same space. I think people should be vaccinated. I'm vaccinated. People should get it. Don't mandate. The American comes out in us when they say you have to do this, because that's not true. And it's had an absolute direct effect on our ability to staff projects. And it's just another one of the hurdles Ron touched on earlier. It might be the highest of those hurdles that is hitting this industry at the exact wrong time. Not just the industry, the country.
Okay. So that was addressed to Steve, and he was the only one that didn't answer.
I didn't realize it was directly addressed to me, but honestly, it's a tough situation. When you have a hospital or a college that you're doing work on, and there's people around, it's a very tough decision. I mean, where do I personally stand on it? Again, to Kyle's point, I'm triple vaccinated myself, and I believe in it. But again, it's frustrating. It's a tough question, and I think that's why we have Ron on the panel to kind of give us what the legal perspective on it. But one of
the things that bothers me the most is for COVID hit early March 2020. We never shut down. We worked. We were hiring people during the height of the pandemic when everybody else was home. We were working. We worked safely. Had no outbreaks, no major outbreaks. We had some positive cases. But we quickly learned and adapted. God bless construction, not just Gecko, but we quickly learned and adapted and shared best practices around social distancing and using weld screens to set up distance areas so people couldn't just wander into spaces, and masking and temperature checks and all those things. And for a year and a half, we worked safely. And then a year and a half later, said, well, now you got to be vaccinated or you can't work here anymore. And said, we've already proven we can do it. So why do we need this vaccine that you're now mandating? So it's been such every day it's another challenge.
Well, to your point, Kyle, the construction companies in the construction industry has always had very good safety, has developed very good safety protocols. So this was something that they put in place fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here's another question that will, Heidi Prisco from Inspired Technology. Do you see an increase in jobs booked for the upcoming year versus 2020, even with the supply chain issues? You think there's more work that's going to come into 2021?
I don't know if we can hear Stuart, but let Stuart answer either by sign language or hopefully microphone.
Well, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, wow. It's amazing. It's a great question. It's a lag situation right now. We have so many projects that are going backwards into the VE stage that were on the books and ready to roll for 21. And some of the deals aren't, we're trying to make them work for our clients. And even if you push the pause button, I think we all recognize that we're not going to see de-escalation. So, we're trying to figure out with our clients what the walkaway point is. So I would say right now, as far as Windover, we do have more on the books for next year than we do in 21. But some of it's on the ropes. So we really got to work that much harder to make the deals work.
I'll say I've heard from some of my members that it's just what Stuart alluded to, is there are a lot of projects that are still up in the air about whether or not it's going to be a go, but they're basically flat or slightly down in 21 and 22, and then off the charts for 2023.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gecko's, one of our niche markets is in biofarm, and speaking of that, we have more backlog now than we've ever had in the history of the company, and the work extends into 23 and beyond on a few key projects. So for us, it's about having the people to do it, because the supply chain is a problem. We took some initiative a year ago and pre-bought $1 million worth of stainless steel tubing with some inklings that this issue was coming up against the industry. So now we're tripping over stainless steel tubing crates and boxes in every corner of the warehouse we have, but we have it, and it's enabled us to continue working and to continue to feed our apprentice program and recruit the best people we can to get it all done.
Smart move, Kyle.
Okay, one last question, and then if anyone would like to join us for some short networking, we'll have that after a short PowerPoint presentation, and we'll do that for about 5 or 10 minutes and then move on for the rest of the day. But how can we plant the seeds with apprentices to develop them to be teachers for future generations of skilled trades people? That's an anonymous attendee sent that.
I can jump in, and I think I read that question, Rick, and I thought to something. I can't remember in our pre-discussion. I think it might have been you or Steve who touched on it, but I think it's sort of incumbent on all of us as stakeholders within the industry to not just rely on our skilled tradespeople to be spreading the gospel, so to speak. It comes on each one of us to tell our children that college may not be the only route for them. If they would rather be a skilled tradesperson, there's no shame at all in going into that industry. And I think there are a lot of contractors and a lot of my members that would say, I don't want my kid to go into construction. And that's really that's part of the problem is, the negative connotation with the industry extends into the industry itself. And, I think that we should really, do some self-reflection on, how are we presenting it to our children, our own involvement with the industry as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you all.
Rick,
it was an excellent panel.
I just wanted to say one thing on John's, and then I'll let you close it out. Is that was never more shown than in one of your events that we had a couple of years ago when we were on a panel. And I believe it was the individual from Interstate Electric who asked the audience how many contractors were in the audience and how many of them had their children go into construction. And it was amazing. It was almost none. And it was, if we're not talking to our own kids about going into the field, how can we expect others to be doing that? And so it really does. It starts at home. It starts with everybody, and not just within this industry, but obviously within this industry, because this industry has been family driven for generations. And we're losing some of that. So it needs to start there, but then it needs to start in everybody's home to start to change the perception of construction being for those who don't make it to college. That's just not the case.
Great. Okay. Like I said, I want to thank you all. I want to thank everyone for attending today. This is being recorded. I know I got quite a few emails that people that were wishing they could have been here, but they got tied up. So they are waiting for this recording to be put up, and this will be up in a couple of days. Like I said, anyone that wants to hang around and would like to stick around for some short networking, we'll be here at the end. I'm going to run a PowerPoint right now. And again, thank you all. Thank all of you for speaking today as well.
AGC, Massachusetts. Building excellence for the industry, building excellence for Massachusetts. Through teamwork, expertise, and leading-edge technologies, Windover Construction is advancing the industry and developing practical, forward-thinking construction solutions.
And again, I'd like to thank all of our sponsors for today: Northmark, U.S. Pavement Services, Inspired Technology, Associated Subcontractors of Massachusetts, Gecko, Evolution Energy Partners, Hinckley Allen, Windover Construction, and AGC Massachusetts Building Excellence. Thank you all. And I can thank our moderator, Kyle Regan from Gecko, for moderating today. Stuart Muir, President and CEO of Windover Construction, Stephen Sullivan from Workforce Development, the Workforce Development for ABC Mass Chapter, Ron Ciotti from Hinckley Allen, and John Ferrante from the CEO of AGC Mass.